with the breath work, with the yoga. It's just a way for athletes to feel empowered in their own body and their own mind.
Hello, and welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast. Hey team, it's Katie here, and today I have Annie Cutri, and she is going to be sharing her information as far as some breathwork stuff that she does for athletes, but we're going to let her share her story as far as sports and soccer and how it ties into what she's doing today. So welcome, Annie.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Katie. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just go ahead and start my story.
Yeah, yep.
Love it. Yeah, so I grew up in Ohio, kind of close to Pennsylvania, and I played, youth soccer growing up, but in my area, there wasn't really any competitive soccer where we were. So I ended up traveling to West Virginia, where I played club soccer out of Morgantown. So it was about an hour and 45 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week for practices, not including games. So it was definitely, kudos to my dad for driving me there for 5 years. But yeah, so our club team was pretty successful. We won states every year. We always didn't do so well in the regional tournament, but yeah, we are pretty consistent in terms of, getting to that regional tournament. So soccer was my sport, also played in high school. I loved the high school game just because you got to play with your friends and it meant something to play for your school. And then when I graduated, I decided to go to Ohio State. I wanted the bigger university, so I made the tough decision to not play soccer in college. I could have played at a few D2, D3 schools that are within like 2 or 3 hours of my area, but I, at that time, wanted to focus on solely my academics. So didn't play in college, but dabbled in club and then also intramurals as well. And fast forward to today, I've been coaching soccer since 2010. I've coached for club teams in Atlanta and then also high school teams in Atlanta, Arizona. And now we're back in Ohio where I coach my alma mater's high school girls soccer team.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how did you get into coaching, back into coaching? Was it just something you wanted to do, or was there a specific reason why you were pulled into it?
Yeah, my husband actually, when he was working in Atlanta, he had a coworker whose daughter's youth team needed a soccer coach. So my husband volunteered me. I had no say in it whatsoever. But I started at a club in Atlanta to coach a U10 soccer team. So it was pretty cool to jump right into the academy, right? Like not just doing rec soccer, but in the club that I worked for was awesome. They paid for me to get my coaching licenses, which was great. So it was really good for professional development. And yeah, it sprung my coaching career. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when you started playing soccer, how old were you that you can
Uh,
remember?
4. Yep.
For?
Yeah, my dad coached me all the way up until I decided to jump into the club game. Yep.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
was he a soccer person? Because I know soccer kind of is more of a, now it's more of a sport that people played when they were little and, they're kind of
Right.
getting their kids into it. So was your dad, like my dad was a football, baseball guy. My
Yeah.
mom was a softball, basketball person. So soccer was a whole new world when me and my brother took to it. So was it something that he had done? Or,
No. So he kind of learned as he went. He actually, I remember when I was probably 8, he went and got certified to be a referee so he could learn more about the game.
mhm.
Because he was football too growing up. My mom wanted me to be a cheerleader, but that was never going to happen. So yeah, he had, it was all just basically because he knew I loved it and he, wanted to support me in the sport that I was passionate about.
That's funny that your mom wanted you to be a cheerleader. I ended up doing cheer in high school
Yeah.
along with a little bit of soccer when I was still playing soccer. So
Yeah.
that's kind of funny.
Yeah. I can't even do a cartwheel, so I just knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, They're
And
definitely athletes though, man. I'm telling you, it's pretty,
yeah,
yeah, pretty
yeah.
wild.
I
So,
mean, when I look at the cheerleading stuff that's going on now, I'm like, yeah, I never would be able to make the squad now because
right,
I was
right.
not a gymnast, which most of
Yeah,
them have to be now. And so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kudos to anybody out there that can do that stuff because I
Heck
definitely
yeah.
can't.
Right, me either.
So when you were in college, you said that you wanted to focus on your academics,
Yep.
but you could have played elsewhere. So
Hmm.
what was the academic area that you were trying to go into that maybe the other schools didn't offer that made you choose Ohio over the other ones?
I wanted to do chemistry with the emphasis on pre-med, and just touring the different campuses. I mean, Ohio State is huge, so they
Mm-hmm.
had so many opportunities for undergraduates to do like research and internships. So I I wanted that for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to just, I mean, we're from a small town, and I was like, I can't do another small town for school. I mean, I wanted the big atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
and the big college. So yeah, with pre-med, I just felt that I would have more connection and more support in terms of what Ohio State could offer for that.
Yeah, yeah, those are that definitely good reasons to do
Yeah,
that if that's the area and field that you're wanting to go
right.
into.
I mean, it
Um,
was a heartbreaking decision. I mean, soccer was my life for like,
yeah.
you know what I mean, for so long. And I don't know, it's kind of funny that it came back, like I had to
Hmm.
hang up my cleats in terms of playing. But I mean, I played in a women's league and stuff in Atlanta, but yeah, back through it with coaching. So you can't
Yeah.
escape me.
Yeah, there's always a way but kind of back in,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's great to see all these people that grew up playing the game, that love the game, that are getting back into it in the different areas
Hmm.
that they do, whether they're coaching or mentoring
Yep.
or doing, rehab, physical therapy
Hmm.
stuff, like whatever it is that they're doing with the athletes of today. And
Yeah.
so it's really great that they're able to
Hmm.
give back and share their experiences and things like that. So it's
Right.
awesome that you're able to do that and you're keeping coaching even though it sounds like you've moved a few different places, but you're
Yeah.
still getting involved. And it's also a great way, especially if you are moving and you're
Hmm.
going to a new place, to meet people
Right.
if you've kind of got that. Because I know a lot of times we're always looking for coaches. I had another discussion
Yeah.
with a fellow coach of mine. I've been coaching her daughter a little bit, and
Hmm.
she was saying, I work with, I think she said she works with a girl that used to play for the club that we coach at. And so she's
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to get her to come back and coach because she's
Yeah,
kind of,
definitely.
a little bit interested. And I'm like, yeah, if you can just get her in the door,
Right,
obviously
right.
she probably knows the rules. I mean, coaching isn't for everybody. Not everybody can be a coach.
Mm-mm.
It's definitely
Yeah.
an exercise in patience.
Yes, it is. And patience. Yeah, I always say I get like a gray hair every game from one gray hair comes every game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what age group and do you coach right now?
Right now, it's a high school varsity team.
Okay.
Yeah, so high school girls.
Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome. And how are
Yeah.
they? Are they in their season right now? I know they are
Yep.
for my area. So,
Yeah, we just started. This week starts our playoff season. So I've been the head coach for 3 years. This is my fourth year. Yeah, fourth year actually. And 2 years ago, we went the furthest my school has ever gotten in the tournament for girls soccer, which was our regional tournament. But the last 2 years, we've graduated about, I'd say, 20 seniors altogether. So this year has been a complete rebuilding year.
hmm.
Team is super young, and I mean, I will tell you, I have never coached such a resilient and positive group of girls ever. So they amaze me every single day because we had so many ebbs and flows, ups and downs this season, but their mindset was always just positive and hungry. It was
That's
pretty great.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome that they're able to dig deep and kind
Yeah.
of want that to be elevated and work
Yeah.
hard and not kind of rely on the other people, that
Right.
maybe were the seniors or juniors, the older
Exactly.
players, they're stepping up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
After college, how did you get into the breathwork stuff that you do now?
It's a very long story, but I mean, this story is why I feel like I'm doing what I'm doing now. So when I was in college, I wanted pre-med, and then I kind of had this, like I butted heads with the medical industry, and I decided that actually medicine was not the route for me. So I went to graduate school, and that's what took us to Atlanta, to get my PhD in chemistry. And I mean, I'm sure many people can relate to this, but I've always been a people pleaser. So I have to get my PhD to make my mom happy. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for about 4 years doing research, and I mean, it just wasn't for me. I was very, it was very isolating. You didn't get to work with people the way that I like to work with people. So I decided to leave with my master's in chemistry, and then I began teaching high school. Um, so through that time in graduate school is when I started a yoga practice. I mean, as an athlete, former athlete, I hated yoga because it was boring and slow, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what are we doing here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I just kind of like let go of that and just decided to be present in a yoga class, it actually became a big part of my life. And just last year, decided to get my certification to teach yoga. And this all stemmed from my husband bought me a birthday package at our local studio, yoga studio, and it was my first experience with breathwork. And it's so cliche to say it, but breathwork has changed my life because it helped me realize my power. Um, and I decided to get my certification to facilitate this particular style of breathwork, because I knew this was a way. I've always loved helping people, which was why I thought originally I wanted to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a way to help support people through breathwork, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, where they are the ones that are in control and they are in control of their own journey. I'm just here to hold space for them. And I love working with athletes because I mean, I gravitate towards athletes. I mean, it's me, I'm an athlete. So
Mm-hmm.
with the breath work, with the yoga, it's just a way for athletes to feel empowered in their own body and their own mind. And I mean, they get to discover things about themselves, whether that's their strength or confidence that they might not have known that they had.
That's awesome that you're able
Mm-hmm.
to gravitate towards that and then you're
Mm-hmm.
turning around and teaching it and helping utilize that for the athletes. So
Mm-hmm.
what specifically, so I like I mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who does breath work and I've kind of been like, I wonder kind of what it's
Yeah.
all about. So what
Yeah.
is the breath work about for people that are not familiar
Mm-hmm.
with breath work?
Yeah. So in a yoga class, we do breath work, different styles of breathing, but the particular breath work that is kind of separate from the yoga, it's called elemental rhythm breath work. And essentially, within a session, we just change our cadences of breath through breathing rounds. So we'll go from breathing really slow to like slowly picking up the speed of breathing. And that kickstarts your nervous system to be in the parasympathetic state or the rest and digest state so that your body, your mind can begin to relax. Because, I mean, especially athletes, we're always in fight or flight mode when we are competing, when we are training. So it's a way to just calm the body and to calm the mind. And then within a session, we breathe for about 20 to 30 minutes. And once we have reached that parasympathetic nervous state, then there's a guided meditation, which there's so many different ways that I could facilitate the meditation to particular people, like whether they're going through something that they want to kind of deal with. And then it ends with an integration session where you just lay there and soak in the practice. So it's about an hour, and it's really a deep dive into yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and all through the power of your breath. So it releases anxiety. I mean, you can release emotion because we store emotions, whether or not we know it or not. If something happens to us, we store that within our body. So breath work is an avenue to release things that we may not know that we're holding on to.
I think I saw on your Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Did you or do you do this with your high school girls after games or trainings or anything?
Yeah. We did one breathwork session with the girls, me,
Mm-hmm.
with my girls. And then I've actually been working with local high school teams as well as I actually just did a session for a D2 acro and tumbling team in Fairmont, West Virginia. So my girls, I think they like the yoga a little more
Mm-hmm.
because they typically fall asleep during the breath work, which is great because that just tells me their body needs sleep because they're
Right.
on it from 6 to 9 o'clock every night, and that's being very generous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how have your athletes, so like you said that the ones that like fall asleep, obviously
Hmm.
they're kind of getting it. But how are they? What were some of their reactions to it as far as your approach to wanting to try it with them? Were they open to the idea? Were they kind of stubborn about it? Was it a mixed bag?
I would say with my girls, it was definitely something that was kind of like, oh, you talk about this all the time, so we're gonna do it. And then, I mean, because they love the yoga piece, they never question like, yeah, let's do yoga, let's do yoga. Sometimes I think it's because they want to get out of practice, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but yeah, I would say it is like when I went to the other schools too, and I would explain what the session is before we would do our session. You would get those faces like, what are we about to do?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very normal. And afterwards, everybody's just like, oh my gosh, when can you come back? Like, can we do this again? This was amazing. I've never felt this good. So it's definitely something that's hard to buy into because, for lack of a better phrase, it is kind of woo woo, you know? It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of not something that is, I guess, commonplace in our culture.
It's
But
definitely
the
not
feed,
mainstream.
yeah, exactly, mainstream. That's the word I was looking for. So, yeah, I do get weird faces sometimes, definitely towards the when I'm explaining everything, but at the end, everybody is just like, yeah, super relaxed and they love it.
So
Hmm.
here's a question. Have you ever done it with a boys team or a male team?
I have not with boys yet or men. I've had like when I would facilitate general classes, it was really strange. I would always have men in my classes because, and they would call me Coach Annie because I don't yell at them when I'm facilitating, but like the coach comes out in me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I haven't done it with a male team yet. Mm-mm.
I'd be I'd be kind of curious to see how like
Yeah,
a boys team, because I feel like the female women
yeah,
might gravitate and be a little bit more open
more
to it.
open. Hmm.
Yeah, than that, because they have to be so strong and everything. But I
Right,
also feel like, especially because they get so hyped up, I feel like more than women do, that
right.
they might need it more.
Need it. Well, or I keep saying we, like there's two of me here, but
I
I
do the same
went,
thing.
I went to another university. Is it a university? It's a college about 45 minutes from where I am. My friend, who's like a strength and conditioning coach, she's teaching like a PE class there. So when I went there 2 weeks ago, there were two male athletes in that class, and they hung through the whole thing. And one of them was like, that was the most relaxing thing I've ever done. So I haven't done
Yeah.
a team, but I've had some, yeah, some male athletes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's good for everybody to do it. And
Right.
like I said, I feel like it has more of a feminine energy towards it, but I feel
Yes.
like it's definitely obviously for everybody, and it would
Hmm.
be a great thing for people to obviously practice,
Right.
especially if they're up on that adrenaline and they do need
Hmm.
to, have that release, that calm down type of a thing. So, one of the things when I think about breath work as well, like, do you, because I know that those sessions are usually post training, post game, they
Hmm.
go for a long time. Do you also train or do any sort of like, I know I talked with another coach briefly
Hmm.
about, I think it was regarding ADHD stuff,
Mm.
but more of a like a short term, like if somebody's having maybe something happened on the field and they're trying to work over that emotion. Do you do any sort of breath work as far as that short term thing that somebody could use maybe on the field during a game?
For sure. I tell my girls all the time because I mean, I don't know if this, like, if you see this with your players too, but my girls get in their heads so easily. And
Mm-hmm.
I always tell them, I never get mad if you make a mistake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
I want you to make a mistake because if you make a mistake, you learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll get in their head or, like you can just see it on their face, their body language that they're down in the moment. So what I've been telling them to do is essentially left nostril breathing. So when they're on the field, you'll see some of them like this. So they just close their right nostril, take a few, like one or two deep breaths through their left nose. And that breath is a breath that you can use to jumpstart your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's able to get them in a calmer state.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah, so that's
interesting.
that's my go-to is to do the left nostril breathing. I mean, they look goofy sometimes. Looks like they're picking their nose, but I mean,
It
whatever
works.
works, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Might throw
yeah,
the opponent off and they'll be like, "What are
right.
you
What are you
doing?"
doing?
So they're
Yeah,
like, I'm Jedi mind tricking you. I'm
yeah.
throwing you off and I'm upping my
Hmm.
game and throwing yours off, I guess you can say. That would be
Yeah.
yeah, that's always something to think about, especially because I feel like you said kids are striving for perfection and they think that if they make a mistake that we as coaches are going to be upset.
Hmm.
And I would hope that coaches out there are creating a safe space for their players to make
Hmm.
mistakes. Like I tell my
Right.
players all the time, especially, at practices and at games, I'm like, I'm not looking for you to be perfect because
Right.
you're young. You're not
Yeah.
professionals, and even professionals make mistakes.
Right.
So it's not like we're expecting you to be at this super high level because
Hmm.
you're at least the age groups that I coach, they're all younger and they're still learning and
Hmm.
so I always tell them I would rather you try to do something right and
Hmm.
maybe make a mistake while you're trying to do whatever it is,
Right.
and then you can learn from it, like you said,
Yeah.
and wanting to be able to fix that or learn from it and go, okay, well,
Hmm.
this didn't work out for me this way, what can I change to
Right.
make it work next time? And so as far as that mentality for the players, it's always good to find a release of some sort that you
Right.
can shrug something off where you go, okay, that didn't work, I just need to move on. Because it's really hard, like as coaches, if something happens, you get a foul called on you or something happens, you lose the ball. And we as coaches try and tell people, move on, next play, keep
Right.
working. Like, don't dwell on what happened. You can't change that, but let's fix what's going on now in the game because we can't
Right.
go back and change that. So it's always good to be able to figure out a good way to redirect your
Hmm.
energy. And so
Right.
if that nostril breathing is,
Yeah.
something for people to do,
Right.
they can definitely figure out what works for them as in the short term, at least on the field. If they
Yeah.
need something, I know when I used to play to get my headspace, I'm sure
Hmm.
people do it even more now because it was like a CD player back in my day.
Right.
I would like, put my
Your disc
headphones on.
man.
Yeah, I have my
Yeah.
Discman with me and I'm listening to my Napster mixed
Right.
CD.
The illegal music we downloaded. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and basically, kind of get in the zone, and that was kind of my
Right.
thing. And I would draw to the music when I was on the
Hmm.
field and that kind of a thing.
Right.
And I always tell my players, I mean, I do it as a coach now, but I'm like, I get so zoned in when I'm
Hmm.
doing something that I don't even like. Parents will be yelling on my sideline and I don't even realize they're
Same. You
doing
don't
it
hear it.
because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so zoned in right now
Right.
doing what I'm doing that I don't have time to pay attention to you because
Right.
I'm trying to pay attention to what's actually happening on the field. I don't have time to
Yeah.
babysit the parents who should be under
Right.
control.
Right.
That kind of a thing.
Be the adults. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so it's very, when I tell my players, I'm like, you just have to figure out,
What works for you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Whatever works for you. And so whatever that may be, whether it's breath work and you want to try it,
Hmm.
whether you reach out to Annie, I will put her Instagram link in the show notes for those of you that want to reach out to her. I'm sure she could do you do online sessions or is it
Yeah,
more of an
definitely.
in-person thing?
I do because I want to reach more people. Because I'm limited physically, like where we are here.
Right.
But yeah, like breath work online is simple to do
Mm-hmm.
because in a session, all they do is lay there. So,
Yeah.
so all you need is your phone and some headphones, and yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
actually pretty easy,
yeah,
definitely. And
yeah.
then like I said, I know somebody that's gotten into breath work in my area.
Hmm.
So if you want a more of an in-person thing, I'm sure that if you just research it a little bit, I'm sure that there's other breathwork coaches, hopefully in
Yeah,
your area. If not,
definitely.
reach out online. Annie sounds like she's a great, she's already going into other than her team. She's already done it with other teams and programs elsewhere. And so she would be a great resource for you. Even if you just have questions about it, reach out to her through Instagram, and she'd be happy to answer
Yeah.
your questions.
And anything like regarding, I mean, not just breath work, but like mindfulness, like easy ways to like what to do before you go to bed as an athlete. I have some great things that athletes can do. I mean, it's like a 5-10 minute bedtime routine so that they can actually get the rest and recovery they want. Yeah, my goal is to support athletes any way that I can. So definitely reach out if you guys have any questions or need tips or anything.
Yeah, those are all definitely really great things because I know sometimes, especially as athletes, like my kids the other day, they fell asleep in their uniforms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so disgusting.
So
So I,
smelly.
yeah, and so parents out there, I feel you if you have kids
Yep.
that do the same thing. And I mean, some of the uniforms that they have are actually very comfortable. So I'm like,
Yeah.
but let's not
Like,
ruin the one that you have
right,
because
right.
it already gets dirty and disgusting
Right.
while you're playing. Let's at least not sleep in it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we need to wash it.
Yeah. But I feel like sometimes my kids, I mean, and my kids are still really young, but they,
Mm,
even when I think about myself, sometimes whether it was coming from soccer or dance or cheer or whatever it was that I was doing, sometimes I just wanted to just like lay in my bed. And if I
mhm.
was coming from dance or whatever, I had like full dance makeup on. And for those of you that do dance or have kids that it's a whole thing, it's like
Right.
Halloween makeup, and I would just be like, I'm so exhausted from whatever it was that I
Mhm.
did that day. And I just collapse into my bed. And sometimes when I think back on it, I'm like, no wonder, like, I feel like I have like back issues and stuff because
Mm,
I probably didn't stretch or relax my body enough to sleep
right,
properly, and I
right.
probably didn't get that rest that I probably needed. And so it's always good. I mean, I always think it's good to try and have a routine, as far
Hmm.
as certain things so that your body knows that it's winding down and that's what's
Definitely.
going to be happening.
Yeah.
So I'm a person who thrives on routine. My husband
Yeah,
is
me too.
not. My husband
Same.
is not, which is so funny because he's
Same.
like, even when I just like get ready in the morning and I like make sure I do all these things. And even one of the things that this is going to be so hilarious for those of you that are listening. So sometimes who here forgets whether or not they put on deodorant? Sometimes I go, hey, I totally forgot if I put on deodorant. Well, I did this. I started doing this thing. It's been several years now, but I told my husband about it like in the last year. And because he accidentally like knocked over my deodorant one day and the lid wasn't all the way on it. And he was like, oh, why wasn't the lid on it? And I go, oh, I popped the lid off slightly so that way I know that I've put deodorant on that day because then I put the lid on it. And so
Yep.
I'm like, if the lid isn't on it and I'm going through my morning routine, then I go, oh, I haven't put that on yet. And then I'll
I like
know.
that. Yeah, I
But
like it.
anyway, so it's like, it's little things like that you don't have to wash your hair
Right.
twice in the
Right.
shower or
Right.
whatever. So
Yeah.
that's my thing
Yeah.
so quick tip for anybody that's my thing that I do.
Listen, I'm going to share that with my assistant coach because at least once a week she's like, do you have deodorant? I forgot to put on deodorant today. So I'm going to share that tip with her. That is awesome.
And I feel like it's like the dumbest thing, but like that's why I have routines because I'm like,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that like when I do things, I feel like sometimes I miss something and I don't know whether it's important or not. And so now
Yeah. Yeah.
he's started to adapt some of the things that I do
Uh-huh.
that I think are kind of dumb, but obviously I don't because I do them every day.
Every day.
And they work. And so he's done some of the thing. He's adapted some of the things that
Yeah.
I do because I'm
Yeah.
a
It
routine
works.
person and he's not.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly how my husband and I are too, for sure. Yeah, total opposites in every way possible.
it's like that
Yeah.
morning. It's like the morning person and the night person, and they
Yep.
meet and they fall in love. And this person's a
Yep.
morning person, and this one's a night person.
Yep.
So I
I'm
feel
the
that.
morning, he's the night. Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
de-
know, it worked when our son was young because I'd handle the daytime, he'd do the nighttime when he was a baby. But yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah.
And how old is your son?
He is about to turn 3. He'll turn 3 next month.
Nice. And
Yeah, it's
Have you already started giving him a soccer ball at his feet, or you kind of letting him do whatever?
Yeah, it's cute. My dad got him, a size one soccer ball. He has two here. One's always in the car because sometimes my dad gets him from when he's at daycare, so they'll swing by our soccer practice and we just let him go on the field and run around, kick the ball. But yeah, I try to not get attached to him playing soccer. I mean, obviously I want him to, but whatever that little dude wants to do, I'll support him 100%.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
how we were with our kids, and they've all gravitated towards playing, even though, I mean, my husband, he's been coaching forever.
yeah,
And then I got into coaching, but we also played like in co-ed leagues, adult
yeah,
leagues, or
yeah.
whatever. And so our kids have been around it a lot.
Right,
And
right.
so naturally they gravitated towards it, but it wasn't something that we were like, you have to play it. You have to try
Right.
it. It was just
Yeah.
like they do it at home. Yesterday they were out. We have these little green spaces in the neighborhood that we live in, and so they
Uh-huh.
drag one of our pop-up goals and they go out there and they
Love it.
play for hours. Like yesterday they
Right.
all of a sudden they all like just disappeared, and so we were like,
Yeah.
oh well, at least they're outside doing something together and
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
fighting, at least that we know.
Not fighting.
So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it's a fun
Yeah,
family activity that they can all do, and they do it
definitely.
together, so it's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. The area I'm in is really big on football. So it'll be curious to see if it's like football, baseball. So we don't
Yeah.
have much still in terms of, I mean, to play at a club. I mean, we have one locally, but it's not as strong. So you have to kind of travel 45 minutes either into Pittsburgh or Wheeling, West Virginia to play pretty
Yeah.
competitively. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always, I always feel sad, but then
Hmm.
like at least there is something. Like we
Right.
have I know there was a player on one of my husband's old teams who used to
Hmm.
travel. I think his drive is about 90 minutes ish,
Yeah.
is from the little, like, it's like a legit small farming town. Like, it's the, when we drive from Salt Lake down to Las Vegas for tournaments, it's like our first gas station stop is the town that
Yeah.
he lived in. And it's
Hmm.
literally like well, now there's going to be four gas stations.
Hmm.
There's two at, no, there's two at one of the, because they have two exits. There's two at one exit, and oh, now there's going to be five because they're building a new one. So, but anyway, it's like the
Yeah.
smallest little town, and it's literally
Right.
just enough that you can get your gas and go, but it's not like a
Go. Yeah.
big town or anything at all. And so he, loves soccer. And so he, like you and other players
Right.
out there that don't have that option, they
Hmm.
have to drive super far to
Right.
get their trainings in
Yeah.
and their practices and their games. And
It's
he would,
tough.
yeah, he would actually stay with a family up here over the weekend.
Mm.
Sometimes one of his really good friends, he would drive up here and stay with the family, and then
Yeah.
he would drive back down after their last game. But it
Yeah.
was definitely a sacrifice to be able to
Yeah.
get those trainings in and play at the level that you want to play in when it's not available. And it's
Right.
definitely really difficult, especially for people who it's literally like a baseball football town or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever there
Yeah.
is. And so it's nice to be able to see when you're able to expand it and provide that,
Yeah.
like you being able to coach the high school level
Hmm.
in the area that you're in. How, I'm curious because you were saying that you had to drive, almost 2 hours to
Hmm.
go to your training. So
Yeah.
the girls that play for your high school, do they have to do that for their club teams? Are they
So
traveling pretty
we,
far to go play for their club
yeah,
teams?
I have a lot of them play for the club that is like within our area. It's just not extremely competitive.
Mm-hmm.
In years past, actually no, like this year I have two girls that play for two different clubs, but they're about 45 minutes away. One's in Washington, Pennsylvania, and the other's out of Wheeling, West Virginia. So I just think that, I mean, we aren't a big soccer town. So we do, like, you have girls that play competitive, they're sprinkled here and there. Others, it's like high school soccer is just they just like to play it,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to play, club soccer because
Right.
a lot of them are involved in other sports as well. So
Mm-hmm.
if the club soccer season's in spring, but they're playing softball for the school or track, they
Right.
can't juggle both. It's just probably too much on their
Right.
mind, their body, and I mean, you risk the injury too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I got a few that play club at various different levels of the club game. Yeah, I'm trying to encourage them all to play this spring, so we'll see if if my encouragement talk works or not. But
How does that, as a high school coach, how does that make it difficult or trying for you when you have players that are at maybe different levels or degrees of knowledge as far as
right,
the sport? How does that work
yeah,
for you?
it's definitely. I mean, it varies honestly year to year, but it is tough. Like I have players who never played soccer until their freshman year of high school, all the way up to girls who've been playing club since they were 9. So a lot of it is I've learned this kind of the hard way this year is as a coach, I make a lot of assumptions, right? Like soccer's been in my life for how long? Like rules, like I mean, a direct kick versus an indirect kick. In my
Mm-hmm.
head, I'm like, okay, direct, it can go directly into the goal. I mean, we saw that this year, like it happened. She was a softball player, never played soccer. She's one of my best athletes on the team, but she had no idea what it was. So it's definitely difficult because they're not all on the same level of soccer knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a great opportunity for the girls who have that knowledge to be able to kind of step into almost a leadership role. Um, I mean, I kind of see them as like little assistant coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't coach all 11 players at the field at the same time, but they're very good at filling the gap of, soccer knowledge with these girls.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps with team chemistry too, because like they'll be supportive, like, oh no, hey, like maybe next time play the ball this way or play it through, here to the corner. But it is difficult to we spend a lot of time working on touch work because my girls don't have good first touches because they don't, play as much as they should.
Right.
And it's very different from when I coached club, where you can focus a little more on tactics. And I feel like we're focused on technique and understanding of the game.
That's awesome though
Hmm.
that the
Yeah,
girls, the other girls are there to help them and guide them and
yeah,
not necessarily be like, why don't you know that? So that's
exactly.
good
Yeah,
that they're
yeah,
able to understand their role and guide and
hmm,
help their
yeah,
teammates and kind of feel, like you said, like a leadership role on the
yeah,
field and help them know what they should be doing and what it
right.
means. Because I,
Hmm.
especially like I'm kind of in the same boat when I have young players who are just starting
Yeah,
out and they
yeah.
don't know, and sometimes their parents don't know the rules, and I'm trying to yell across the field at a player that it's a kick because there's been an offside call, and
Right, right.
everybody's standing around going, well, is it a throw in or is it a kick? Or, and I'm trying to yell what's actually going on because maybe the ref at that, some refs for the younger ages, some of them will explain what's happening
Right.
and some of them just assume that they should know what's happening.
No. Yeah.
And sometimes when they call something, as a coach, you don't even know. Like
Right,
it
right.
usually happens a lot where you're just going, what just
What?
happened? What are you calling? Like, and so sometimes you're just like, wait, like you've seen it in lots of games, professional games even, where somebody gets fouled and you think that the call should go one way and it actually ends up going the other,
Goes
and
the
you're just
other.
like,
Yeah.
what? And we're all just standing there scratching our heads going, what did you see
Yeah.
that we? And so it's really nice when at least at the younger ages, obviously
Hmm.
sometimes the high school ages, they probably have the assumption that they should know what's going on,
Yeah.
probably. And
Yeah.
so for the referees to help at least the younger players, I feel like,
Yeah.
I mean, at any level, at least tell them what you're calling, because sometimes
Right.
they'll lift the arm because it's offside, or they'll make a hand gesture that we as coaches should probably know what's the
Right.
gesture is for, but the players don't know
Have
what
no
it's
idea.
for. They're
Right.
just like, why is he raising his arm? He's raising his arm because it's a foul, or even though it's not a foul. And so it's always nice to be able to communicate that and
Yeah.
let the players know. Like I have some players I'm coaching the youngest 7v7 age group of girls this
Hmm.
year in my club, and I have a couple players who played 7v7 last year. They played up an age group.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
so they kind of already know what's going on. So they're filling
Hmm.
that leadership role on the field with these new girls who haven't done it. And
Right.
they're like that, where they're going, okay, well, this is where you need to be as far as like maybe if there's a kick play that we're running. And
Yeah.
so they're helping them, letting them know, get behind the build outline that they have and
Yeah.
different things. So it's good to see even at those younger ages that some of them
Yeah.
are taking that responsibility, because I'm screaming from across the
Right.
field and I'm like, I don't know if they can. Sometimes I literally am like, I'll ask the girls, can you not
You
hear
hear me?
me?
Yeah, yeah, oh, I'm the same. I
you
like need a
know?
megaphone. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's great that like even at that age that they are communicating because I mean what I've noticed with my team, we'll sometimes play silent and it's like trying to pull teeth to get them, to talk on the field. So if they're doing
Mm-hmm.
it that young, like that's beautiful because then they'll carry that,
Mm-hmm.
as they get older and yeah, when my girls communicate on the field, it's like a whole different team as opposed to when they just play in silence because
Yeah.
they're not supporting each other. I mean, they don't know like that you're going to make that run or that there's a mark behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely communication is such a great skill for players to have.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely is.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I don't have any other questions for you. Do you have anything else that you want to share as far as what you do for athletes or anything like that, coaching advice or anything that
Um,
you want to share?
oh, coaching advice. My big ones don't assume because I've been struggling with that this year, but
It's
yeah.
definitely good advice, though, especially
Yeah.
for maybe there's an athlete, like you said, who's been
Yeah.
doing something else and they tried soccer later on. And
Hmm.
because they're an athlete, they can transition from sport to sport, but maybe they don't know
Right.
the rules of the game. So I think that's a great one, is don't assume.
Yeah. And I'm finding I have a new assistant coach this year who's younger and um, she's having a hard time like getting the girls to, I mean, she kind of yells a little bit, a little bit too much. So
Hmm.
just kind of like, I think the hardest piece about coaching is, you have to coach to the players that you have. Some might not respond to you yelling at them.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of don't be afraid to try new coaching styles and really get to know your players, like how to support them. I mean, I feel like my job as a coach with these girls, I mean, I feel like their mom sometimes, like their therapist, like coach the whole person is probably another. It's like one of the things that I kind of live by. Coach the human, not the soccer player. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And on the
Hmm.
communication, sometimes I'll do like when the girls aren't paying attention and I've tried to get their attention and they're not
Yeah.
listening, I'll start to whisper,
Uh-huh.
because then like other people will be like, what
What
is
is
she
she
saying,
doing?
like, and they kind of get, it throws them off, they get
Yeah.
confused and they have to
Yeah.
focus on what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, okay, now that you guys have calmed down and you're
Yeah.
quiet and you're paying
Listen.
attention, and I think
Yeah.
I mean, because I've helped coach boys as well, and for the most part, girls are definitely worse at the talking than boys. But
Yeah.
sometimes, the boys get rowdy and rough, and
Right.
they do other things that are distracting versus, maybe just the chit chat that the girls do. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely a different basket from boys to
Definitely.
girls. And
Yeah.
sometimes I like to go and coach the boys, because sometimes they don't need me as much. I'm there to
Right.
like set out cones and go, okay,
Support.
here's
Yeah.
what you do, but they do it
Right.
on their own. Whereas the girls, like,
Hmm.
I'll set up the cones for whatever exercise we're going to do, and then they stand there and they're waiting for me to say go. Whereas the boys, I set up the cones, I put the stuff out, and they just go and do it. But the girls, it's like
Right.
they're waiting for me to be like, go. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
guys just start playing. Like,
Just
why are
start.
you
Just
sitting
go.
there?
Yeah.
So, but they'll just stand there, and I'm like, I don't have to tell you to say go. You know what you're doing. Just
Right.
get going.
Just do
Like,
it. It's funny because we share the field sometimes with the boys' team, and it's always the same. The girls will wait till I have to say go warm up to start, even just like kicking a ball around. But the boys,
mhm.
the second they get there, get their gear on, they're out there like playing 1v1 or they're taking shots, it's funny because it happens when they're older too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting because I've tried to tell they're not much older, but they've been playing for me for 3 years now.
Yeah.
When I'm like, okay, go, we'll do like a 2 line warm up thing, like, and I'm like, okay, you guys all know what you're supposed to do, so just do it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, if you guys know what the next one is supposed to be, just go. You don't have to wait for me because I'm like setting up other cones and
Other
stuff.
things. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
do other stuff. And they like stop after they've done one lap. And I'm like, oh my gosh, keep going.
Keep going.
I'm like, you guys know what to do. Even if you like do it in a different order than I do, I don't
It's
care.
okay.
It's
Right.
just keep the momentum
Keep
going.
keep
So
going. Keep going. Yeah.
yeah, I definitely feel
Yeah.
that. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I have definitely enjoyed this conversation
Same.
today. If you guys, again, if you have any questions about mindfulness, breath work, yoga, anything that you have questions on, reach out to Annie on her Instagram. I'm going to link it in the show notes. What is your Instagram, just so people can hear it?
Annie.Cutri. So ANNIE.CUTRI.
Okay, and I've already seen some of her work, and it's very interesting, and I'm very intrigued by it. Like I was telling her, that's something that I, as a player, probably would have
Yeah.
loved to have had, and I know some of my current players, even though they're young, they definitely
Hmm.
probably could use that, especially
Yeah.
after a rough game maybe that they've had, and they need that calm
Yeah.
down type of a thing,
Hmm.
and so it's if you have any questions about that, any information that you want to get, reach out to
Hmm.
Annie and she'll be happy
Definitely.
to reach out to you and respond. But thank you again for coming on today.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me. And if you want to try a virtual breathwork session, let me know.
Yeah, definitely. I would
Yeah.
totally love to
Yeah.
try that. That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. Awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for kicking it with me and have a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Kick It With Katie Podcast _ between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.